What's up out there? We are back some more Path of Exile 1 because 3.26, The Secrets of the Atlas, is coming to us June 13th. Live stream reveal is going to be June 5th. I will have a little bit of a recap and my thoughts on it. From what I've seen a couple of other creators talking about, it sounds like this is going to be an Atlas expansion. I have no idea on the lore of the game, and I haven't been playing but for a couple of years now, so a lot of the things they're talking about I don't really understand because I've just not followed the game that long. But it sounds like we're headed for a big, or hopefully a big Atlas expansion. And I think that's going to play into my plans for this league because I want to spend more time trying to do bossing and things like that. So I wanted to talk about what my plans are for 3.26, unless something massive changes, unless the live reveal completely breaks the build that I want to do or something like that. I wanted to talk in this video about what my plans are, so put a big pin in there, or put an asterisk on it, pending, subject to massive changes. But before we dive into where I want to go in 3.26, I want to talk briefly about where I've came from and why my plans are the way they are in 3.26. It's just kind of leading, it's all built on each other. So when I started playing in Crucible League, I did a witch. I think I played in Standard League. I did a DIY build that was just god-awful. I found out you could just keep retrying boss fights, and that's what I did. So I died hundreds of times, made it into the mapping section, and then I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue going with the game or not, but then I did decide to continue playing it and try a league out, which was going to be Ancestors League. So I was looking around trying to find a build. Obviously, the first build that you find is Pox's Righteous Fire, and it's very popular for a reason. So when Ancestors came out, I league started Righteous Fire, and I was happy. I was like, cool, I've got this build. I went, killed the Eater and the Exarch, took them down. Everything was good. That was going to be my build for Affliction. That was going to be my build going forward. Hey, I've got the build locked in. I don't have to worry about anything else now. I can just go and learn the game. I've got a build. Then when they announced Affliction League, they announced that they were making changes to Righteous Fire. The way it scaled, it was going to scale completely different. And even Pox had no idea what the build was going to look like. So when it came time to league start, 2 weeks before Affliction League, I was stuck without a build because nobody knew what Righteous Fire was going to work or how it was going to work going forward. You know, you kind of got to get the game and play it to figure it out. You can speculate on some things, but until you actually get the game or get the league start, you're not going to know. So my choice was, do I DIY my own crappy build again? Do I look for a different build, or do I just wait for a few weeks until they figure out Righteous Fire and then come in and play? Well, nobody wants to wait for 2 weeks. So, and my DIY skills were horrible at the time, so I was like, all right, I got to go find a build. I looked around and I found a couple of variants of Bone Shatter. One was a Slayer and one was a Jug. So you did Leech on the Slayer version and you did Regen on the Jug version. I really liked the Jug version of it, so I ended up trying both in Affliction League. I league started the Slayer, and then I swapped over to Bone Shatter and loved it a lot more. So Bone Shatter Juggernaut was basically what I did in Affliction and how I league started Necropolis. Now, amidst all of the other, I tried probably 6 or 12 different builds. I try a lot of different builds as I play because I've been trying to learn the game. I'm always interested in trying something new. I'll get a unique. I'll be like, oh, what can I use this unique for? Or I'll watch somebody's video and I'll see them do something cool. And I'm like, all right, I got to try that in one of my builds or in something I got going on. So I'm always trying new builds. And over the course of Affliction and Necropolis, I was kind of just sitting there thinking, I really just want my own build. And towards the end of Necropolis, I was starting to create my own build. So when 3.25 Settlers League came out, I thought, this is it. I'm going all in on DIY builds. I normally play SSF, but I decided to go into Trade League because they announced the currency exchange. So I wanted to see how the currency exchange worked. And it turned out really good because now I can go trade Divines off or whatever currency that I've got. I could trade them off and get just big showers of currency like fusings and stuff like that. So what I did for Settlers League, my grand scheme was to sit down, what do we got, 18 different ascendancies or something like that? I wanted to sit down with every one of the ascendancies except for the Scion and create my own build for each one. Now, this is a lot of work. It's very exhausting. It's very rewarding because you learn a lot about the game, but it takes a lot of effort. So I sat down with every single ascendancy. My goal was to end up with a list of my own POB guides for myself, a list of builds that I could sit down and take into future leagues and develop further. that, learn the game a little bit deeper and things like that, learn why you use different parts of the passive tree, what the different ascendancies are good for, because some ascendancies are better for one thing than others. You know, some have more chaos damage, some have more bleed abilities and things like that. So I wanted to really dive into all of the different ascendancies and do something with them. Now, one of them got me through to the Eater and the Exarch. The rest of them, once I did that, all I cared about the rest of them was that they got into the mapping section. I didn't care how far they got. I just wanted to get them through the campaign, because getting a build through the campaign is a little more difficult than you would think. And you have to adjust for a lot of things. Like, you may start running into being frozen all the time, being stunned all the time, being whatever. And you have to not having enough mana or something like that, not getting mana regen. So there's a lot of problems that you have to resolve as you work around this. And I took almost every single ascendancy into the mapping section. I'm going to say 3, but there was probably 2 or 3 different ascendancies that I didn't actually complete the campaign with. There was some I just couldn't figure out what to do with them, like Necromancer and stuff like that. I'm not good with minions, so I now see where I could use it with other skills, but when I started off, I was like working on skeletons or something like that, for an example. So most of the builds that I tried got into the mapping section. There were some that didn't, but I did try to make sure that all of them got through their first ascendancy. So I at least got that far to at least have something to build forward for if I had some other idea come up, or they got it fully into mapping, and then I could see which one was going to be good ones to keep going on with. And some examples that I have, my Tectonic Slam Chieftain, that's the one that I did the Eater and the Exarch with. I league started with, what was that? I don't remember. It was some crappy bow build, but it was bad. And it was a build that, I don't know. I'm not even going to talk about that one anymore. It was a bad build. I league started with that. It was a bad experience. When I did my Tectonic Slam Chieftain, I found that the Chieftain existed. I love the Chieftain ascendancy. There's a lot of good things you get with it. You can blow up the screen with enemies. You can, your elemental resistances are easy because all you have to do is scale fire resistance and stuff like that. So just trying the Chieftain out was massive in and of itself. But then I got Tectonic Slam to work on it, and again, that's how I beat the Eater and the Exarch. I did a lot of in-game stuff with it. I like the build. It's pretty cool. It's definitely one I'm going to stick in my back pocket, but that's not the build that I'm going to go with. Again, I have a list to choose from. Even though I really liked that one, it's not the one that I think is quote-unquote for me. So I tried a bunch of other stuff, like a Splitting Steel Champion. Again, it's my DIY version, not whatever the good version somebody else has. I did a Kinetic Bolt Gladiator, Exsanguinate Mind Saboteur. I see why people like Exsanguinate on mines. I did an Absolution Inquisitor, which I thought was really fun. I did Absolution on, I don't remember if the Inquisitor was the one that I ended up liking. It was the one I had further in my notes, or leveled up higher, so I presume it was the one I actually liked. But I tried Absolution on 2 different Templar builds. The one that I started with wasn't as good as what Inquisitor was. I put a video out and somebody said, hey, you should try that on Inquisitor. I did, and I loved it. So not all the ascendancies worked out really well, and some of them I tried multiple skills on, or tried the same skill on 2 different ascendancies, multiple ascendancies. So I tried Absolution on whatever it was first, and then I ended up I think I liked it on Inquisitor better. So I tried a lot of different stuff. I did Creeping Frost Occultist. I think I started working on a Creeping Frost Elementalist, but I really liked the Creeping Frost idea. That was pretty cool. I had an Ice Crash Slayer. I loved Ice Crash. You could just wall up rares. That's like what I remember about that build specifically. That was the build that I could pretty much one-shot rares. I've never been able to one-shot rares. Like, you just come up, whack it, and it was dead and gone. But I think that was because it was on Slayer, so you've got that culling effect and everything with it. But regardless, that was a fun build. It had this massive AoE. Again, it was a cool build. I liked it, but it's not necessarily the one that I want to take going forward. So somewhere along the line, one of my ideas was to take a movement skill, and I wanted to do something stupid like Leap Slam or something like that. I thought, movement skill, it'd be kind of a meme build or whatever. I wanted to just see what I could do with it. Then I discovered that Cyclone was also a movement skill, and I said, hey, that's great, because I've already wanted to do a movement skill, and this is a movement skill. It's a very cool spin to win type thing. I liked it. So I started working all through the different ascendancies, or the next goal or the next idea that I had. Not only was I trying all the different ascendancies, but I wanted to take one skill across all of the different ascendancies and see what I could do. And that skill ended up being Cyclone. I kicked around some fire-based skills, but ultimately Cyclone was the one. And the biggest example, the ones that I liked the most, was Cyclone Juggernaut, Cyclone Chieftain, and Cyclone Berserker. I thought all three of those were very good, but I did have, I think, like a Cyclone Deadeye, and I know I had a Witch version of it at some point, because Cyclone is a channeling skill, and there's cast while channeling, so you can throw out some cool spells and do interesting things with that. But then along the lines, we got Freesia League, where I took the Behemoth, I think it was, the Ascendancy. Basically, you couldn't use any magic at all. So I took Cyclone, and I actually took Cyclone in Freesia League on what essentially is my Berserker passive tree. And I took it all the way up into the Eater and the Exarch, no problems. Had no issues with that, no magic, so I couldn't do like Determination or anything like that. Couldn't use Berserk or cast one damage taken or anything along those lines either, but I still got through the Eater and the Exarch. So, and it was doing some really good work on the end-game mapping and some of the in-game bossing and things like that. There were still some bosses I had trouble with. I don't fully have all of my defensive layers figured out where I can survive stuff. I still can't quite finish a T17 map. The boss, I either die in the mapping, or I can get through the mapping pretty easily and then get to the boss and then die and just not be able to beat the boss with either the Tectonic Slam Chieftain or one of my Cyclone variants. But I ended up really liking Cyclone, and I can't quite decide whether it's going to be a Chieftain or a Berserker. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a Berserker at this point. But my league plans, or my build plans for 3.26, is to take one of my Cyclone variants and roll through that. I'm pretty certain that I'm going to do 2 builds, possibly 3. I'm going to do my Berserker because I can get 1.5 million DPS out of it. So that should be a good Maven viable build that I could scale up. I need to figure out one of the things that, well, we'll get into that when we talk about the league plans, but I still don't quite have how to get from tier 16 maps to Maven fight successfully. Like, I can get to the fight, but I can't beat the Maven. So there's some defensive stuff that I need to figure out. There's also things like where to get Awakened Gems and farming them and things like that I've just not spent enough time to figure out the best methods for doing. You know, I can do all the other stuff from tier 16 and lower, no problem. I can make a build that can do all that, do mapping, all that's cool. I just can't quite get to tier 17 or the Maven or anything like that past all that. So that's kind of what my goals are, and that's kind of how I'm progressing forward. So when I say that if they're doing an Atlas expansion and add it, like if they're adding bosses or something like that, that's going to work really well for my plans, because I want to focus in on just a couple of builds this league. So I normally play the league from start to finish. This is what my league plans are. I normally play from start to finish. So if it's going to be a 3-month league, I play for all 3 months of it. I might take a little bit of a break before the next league announcement and go dive off into something else and come back. But this time around, I want to build in an exit. I don't want to sit and play for month after month after month. There are other games that I want to play. I'm not even going to speculate on games because that's like a whole other conversation. There's a lot of other games that I'd like to get to, and I want to do the Maven fight. So I'm going to try to do my best not to get distracted by all the other builds that I normally get distracted with. So I want to build an exit in, like play the game for 1 month, 4 weeks, something like that, and then figure out what I'm going to do from there. Try to get as much done in that 1 month time period, 2 to 4 weeks, like most normal people play the league. I want to build in an exit because I want to try to rotate other games in or do other things. So I want to take 1 or 2 builds, possibly 3. I'm going to leave that open. I don't want to do the 6 or 12 that I normally do. I want to just focus in on a couple of builds, try to spend more time in the end game, because I've spent a lot of time going through the campaign. I want to take the couple of builds that I'm planning on doing, and I want to get those into end game and get the bossing done. I want to do the Maven. I want to attempt the Maven more, and I want to try to get Awakened Gems and try to figure out how to get my build from that tier 16 up to T17 or Maven. And this is all DIY, so I have to figure it out myself, and that's what I want to focus on this time. So less time developing builds. I don't want to have to deal with all that. I've got some POBs. I've got my own build guides that I can follow. And I want to focus on trying to get to the Maven and actually defeat the Maven for the first time. That's going to be my goal. Now, I don't know if I'm actually going to get there or not. And then I want to get through it a little bit quicker so that I can get off and do some other things or engineer some breaks in to go play some other games. Because I don't want to just get I don't want to stay so totally sucked into Path of Exile that I just don't ever play other games. And that's kind of where I'm getting. And bouncing back and forth between PoE 1 and PoE 2 is going to be a chore. And I'm hoping, like, I don't want 1 year leagues, but I also don't want month and a half leagues where every month and a half we're league starting in one of the other games. So anyway, now what I plan to do is a little mini series. I did this before, following the build through the different acts, and it's like a 0 to hero style. I want to do that for whatever Cyclone variant that I start. Like I said, I think it's going to be a Berserker. It may be a Chieftain. And what I want to do is take whatever I do for one build and just keep the gear, and then I have it for the other build. They're both going to use the same gear. They're both on the Marauder. So gearing them is going to be easy, and it should be about the same. The passive trees won't be all that much different. There will be differences, but they won't be terribly different. So I'll be able to just build both of them together. That's why I don't think it's going to be too much of a time sink. Now, there's some other stuff I'd like to do with a different build. Like, I'd love to put a Death's Oath build together at some point. I'll leave it open to have whatever wacky, stupid idea that I come up with. Sure, I'll go try one at some point, but I want to focus in on these two. But league start, I've got June 13th off work. What I plan on doing is sitting down and taking it from 0 to hero and doing like a little series of somewhat. However it comes out, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to edit it out yet, but I want to take that. I wanted to do that this league, but my build sucked so badly that it just wasn't fun. And my plans for this next league is, now that I actually have a build that works and somewhat does what it needs to do, I'm league testing things right now, trying to figure out, there's a giant gap. So you can't actually put Cyclone on until level 28, which is usually the middle of Act 3. So there's 2.5 acts of leveling that I have to do before I can actually put Cyclone on. And you know, you got to figure out what parts of what spokes on the passive tree to take to get lined up for picking up the skill. And you have to have a skill that can get you to that point without much frustration. You know, I'm going to die here and there, but I need something that's not going to be frustrating to get up into the point where I can actually put Cyclone on. And I'm working on that. I've got a Berserker in Act 8, which is what you've been watching in the background. And then I've got a Chieftain that I just started, or it's going to be a Chieftain. I just started that out. I'm trying to figure out what skill to use, what gear to focus on, and things like that in that early game. Because when I did all this before in 3.25, I had access to all kinds of extra uniques and all the currency that I could funnel into it. So it made the build process far easier. League starting is a whole different ball game, and I'm testing that now. I'll probably do a video at some point here showing what the build's going to look like and how it's going to go. But that is my plans. I started off, I thought I had Righteous Fire locked in. I thought that was going to be my build, and I could just learn the game from that. And then plans changed. I had to start learning builds. I kind of got up to 3.25 and said, all right, I'm just going to DIY my own builds, and that's what I did. So here we are. Now I'm able to sit down and intelligently pick between my own builds and say, I like this one, I don't like that one. That one was cool, but it's not quite, you know, it was fun for a little bit, but it's not going to be my main daily driver. So now I do have a choice between a couple of daily drivers that I'm going to work on. And I now have a focus, which I think is going to play into it. Like, to be honest, Settlers League was great being in Trade League with the currency exchange. Like, I didn't trade gear, I just traded currency. But having the ability to trade currency was massive. That was so nice to be able to swap currency around. And if I had a div, I could trade it off and get a whole bunch of fusings or something and build my build very easily. I am going back to SSF, though. I do want to do SSF, and I want to that's just what I'm going to do for 3.26. But if they're doing an Atlas expansion and they're adding some bossing or some other stuff like that, that's going to play into my interest in focusing on the end game, because that's where I'm going to be spending my time. So if that's what they do for this league, I'm going to be very happy, and it's going to play my plans are going to fit in nicely with what they're doing at the league. So we have yet to see what the league is going to be. And all of this could change, could be doing something different. Maybe they remove Cyclone from the game. I don't know. If they do, I'm going to be hurting. But I do have some alternatives like Tectonic Slam Chieftain or something like that. I've got some things I could choose from, but my choice is going to be some variant of Cyclone, either on Berserker, probably the Berserker one, or on Chieftain, or both, probably both. But I want to focus in on the Maven, and I want to try to get in and out and be ready to play some other things, or at least take some breaks here and there and go play other games. But that is my plans for 3.26. More to come as we get more information about it and as I do some more build testing and things like that. But that's going to do it for this video. We will catch you on the next one. Take care.